Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. It's movie review time, man. We've been doing a bunch of trailer reactions. Now it's time to talk about some movies, and we've been talking about a little HBO Max action. Last video, we talked about Lockdown. You can see my thoughts on that right up there. Not a movie that really worked for me. But there's hope on the horizon at HBO Max because there are a pair of cartoon animals I grew up adoring, and they got a new movie. Question is, did that movie work, or did it not work? Well, HBO Max might be on an 0 for 2 streak, because this one, if you're a Tom and Jerry fan, might not be exactly what you're looking for. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into Tom and Jerry. And like I said, if you are a fan of Tom and Jerry, you might not be a fan of this movie. Because the thing that I think all of us worried the most, anytime you take a, animated property from my childhood where they're either a pair of animals or mutated animals or not human beings, and you put them in a live action movie, suddenly the humans become more important or just as important as the titular characters. And that's the case here. Tom and Jerry, I think, end up with like a 40-60 split in this one, and it's not what I was here for, man. I was here for Tom and Jerry hijinks, and I get it. And it's one of these things, I think, specifically with Tom and Jerry, can always be a struggle in a long-form film because they live in the 10 to 15 minute short area. You get like a 5-10 minute little hit of Tom and Jerry. It's wonderful. You move on to the next story. And like most of these types of movies, it seems like people don't know how to tell that story without telling at least one other story that involves human characters that we need to follow around. Problem here is that it's not just one human story, but there's a human story that's inside another human story, and that human story should really kind of be like a background thing, and it is a main storyline, and that is the wedding that takes place here. If you are unfamiliar with the synopsis for this Tom and Jerry movie, Tom and Jerry are both homeless. They're both looking for a new place to live. Tom is trying to make money being a piano player. Jerry is just swiping objects, money, anywhere he can. If he can cheat Tom out of some money, he'll cheat Tom out of some money. And they both end up at this really, really fancy fake New York hotel. And, as we've seen in the trailer, Jerry, is doing what he's doing, but classic Jerry smells some cheese, ends up in a kitchen. The cook, who's played by Ken Jeong, who you have Ken Jeong in, and he's completely wasted in this movie. But he sees Jerry, and then everybody's freaking out because there's a mouse causing havoc in the hotel, and there's going to be this huge, huge wedding that's taking place in the hotel. And that leads Chloe Grace Moretz's character to helping get Tom hired to track down Jerry, and you'd think that would be it, but we spend a lot of time with Chloe Grace Moretz. We spend a lot of time with Colin Jost and Pallavi Sharda, who played Ben and Preeta. They are our couple getting married, and we spend a pretty good amount of time with them. And we spend a pretty good amount of time with Chloe Grace Moretz, who is someone who just lost their job. She usually goes to this hotel to sneak food during the brunch specials or whatever that's going on, and the only reason she can get in and out is because the doorman is cool with her. And then an opportunity to work there during this wedding pops up, so she tries to apply, does it in a really weird kind of shady way, ends up getting the job, and then has to spend the whole movie trying to keep her job. And we spend a lot of time with that story. And like I said, we spend a lot of time with Ben and Preeta. And I'm not going to lie to you, I did not care about Ben and Preeta at all. Oh, there's a wedding at the hotel. Okay, cool. Tom and Jerry are going to mess that wedding up, and I'm totally here for it. I'm not here for Colin Jost and Pallavi Sharda getting into wedding fights and going too big or too small, and it's just stuff I don't need. And while I really do like Chloe Grace Moretz as an actor, and I also love Michael Pena, who plays her boss, or one of her two bosses, just didn't care about their story and just spending time with that story. Yeah, didn't work for me. Now, that's not to say that everything in this movie is bad. Tom and Jerry are actually pretty fantastic in the movie when they are in the movie. Anytime that you get to spend 5 minutes with Tom and Jerry, you are really enjoying this. That there is a stretch where like Tom is trying to get into the hotel by running across like one of those like telephone like wires. That whole sequence is the one we've seen in the trailer where he does like the Batman symbol up in the moon. Fantastic. Wonderful, classic Tom and Jerry stuff, right down to using Tom's classic voice when he screams or yells or gets hurt. I loved all of that. If you are a Tom and Jerry fan, there are a bunch of little like Easter eggs that are Tom and Jerry bits that are kind of layered throughout the movie that are great. There's another stretch where the two of them kind of get to have like a day in New York City. I could have lived in that for like 15, 20 minutes, man, and we get like 2.5, 3. And that's really the biggest problem with this one is just there's not enough Tom and Jerry. And we get like, you know, some other classic Tom and Jerry characters that pop in there. Spike the dog is here. Toodles Galore, the white cat that Tom's always trying to get with, she pops up. She's actually Prita's cat, and Ben's dog is Spike. We get to see the alley cats that we're familiar with Butch, Lightning, Topsy, and I believe Ash. Like, there are a lot of elements that belong to Tom and Jerry that work really well when they're on screen. I could have used a lot more time in the pound, when we go to the pound where we see all the alley cats for the second time. I could have spent more time with Tom who's chasing Jerry. Anytime that happens and they get into like the big cyclone ball, like, and things are just being destroyed, the movie works. Everything that's not that really doesn't. And then outside of the story, there are things in the movie that I did enjoy. I think the animation is fantastic. I love seeing this kind of like CGI'd 2D animation at work, and I thought it kind of meshed decently in the real world. And you know me, I'm a nostalgia sucker. I grew up with a lot of movies that had live action and cartoons meshed together. So to see them work in this way was fun. And the other thing that I kind of liked a lot about the movie was the fact that you get Tom and Jerry into the real world by making all animals cartoon, and they fully commit to that concept. Every animal you see in this movie, and there are a bunch of them, specifically in and around the wedding, all cartoons. If you're a dinosaur skeleton in a museum, or you are a lamb chop being cooked inside the kitchen, it is a cartoon animated piece of material in the movie. Loved that stuff. Other thing I love in this movie, the soundtrack. The soundtrack is fantastic. If you are a fan of hip-hop, R&B, I mean, there is a stretch where Jerry is chilling, listening to Jodeci. Never thought I would say that ever in my entire life, but man, am I happy that I did, because I love the soundtrack. I'm a classic R&B hip-hop guy. They have so many great songs throughout this whole movie. However, the way in which they're delivered is kind of weird. We have this flock of pigeons. There goes my hat again. It happened last review too, man. Too much hair. That doesn't want to stay on. We have this flock of pigeons that sings throughout the movie, and you know, that's how we start. Like, we start with following these pigeons. The first animated thing we see in the movie is not Tom and Jerry, but a flock of pigeons that are, I think they're maybe doing Two Live Crew or one of the hip-hop song at the start, and I was just like, ooh, this is not how I wanted this movie to start. And actually, like, that whole bit in the trailer where you see Tom and Jerry, like, heading into the city from the suburbs doesn't exist in the movie. That's how I thought we were going to start. But that doesn't happen. Instead, we get these pigeons, and I kid you not, while they're flying, one of the pigeons poos, and the poo comes out the butt and hits another pigeon square in the chest. That was when I knew we were on a rocky road with this movie. And then they don't show it, but they literally take time to have Spike take a poop in a crosswalk when Michael Pena's walking him. And like I said, you don't see the poop, but you see the shake that the dog will do to make sure everything gets onto the ground. And look, I get it. This is a kid's movie, but that type of humor just doesn't work when it's that blatant and in your face. It just like makes you go, oh, that's where we're going. We're not going with like clever or smart humor. And that's, the downside to this movie is like the animation's really cool. Let's give you tons of animation that aren't Tom and Jerry, and we spend time with just characters and animals and things that, aren't our main characters. Sometimes are just too childish, and feel out of place in the rest of the movie. Like the rest of the movie doesn't operate that childishly. So when things like poop flying around happen, kind of feels out of place, and the human being storylines just I didn't care for, and we have a nice, human being cast. Chloe Grace Moretz, like I said, she does a fine job. So does Michael Pena, even Rob Delaney. There's a girl who works in the hotel, played by Patsy Ferrin, Joy, the bell girl. She is one of those, like, she just kind of pops up when you're not expecting her, and wasn't utilized correctly. Like, that is it. As cliche character trope as you can give someone, and they didn't make it work in the movie. And that's just where my problem lies, And then there's one other character in here, Cameron, who's played by Jordan Bolger. He works at the bar and seems to like have this really cool connection with Chloe Grace Moretz, yet they never explore that or try to turn that into a thing. And it's like, you're forcing me to watch this human storyline, and I'm watching something go on, in this movie where there's a wedding, and there's nothing. Don't know why he gave them any interaction whatsoever. You could have cut, no offense to Jordan Bolger, he does a fine job, but you could have cut Cameron out of the movie and given Tom and Jerry like 10 more minutes. And that for me is where we end on this thing, man. It's Tom and Jerry stuff is great when they're doing their shenanigans and the things you grew up watching. That stuff is awesome. There are 2 new Tom and Jerry shorts in the extras that you can watch. I recommend watching both. They were fantastic, and they totally play into a couple concepts from, the movie. But when you're not doing Tom and Jerry things, I just couldn't care about anything else that was going on in the movie, and it just seems like they kept adding story on top of story on top of story. I mean, even Michael Pena has like a C storyline running through this thing, and I'm like, where is there time for Tom and Jerry at all? So, unfortunately, as much as I love HBO Max and typically love their content, the last 2 things I have watched from them, not working for me. And I was nervous about, Tom and Jerry being in the real world, and turns out I was right to be nervous, especially when the Tom and Jerry stuff was good. Like, just lean into that. Do more of that, Tim Story and Kevin Costello, our director and writer. And you probably would have had a big ol' hit on your hands that, classic Tom and Jerry fans would have really loved. Maybe this movie works for young kids, but as someone who grew up with Tom and Jerry, wasn't my cup of tea. So there you go, man. Those are all my thoughts on Tom and Jerry. Unfortunate miss here. That could have been a home run if they would have just leaned into the main characters. It's amazing how many times I criticize a movie because they don't lean into the main characters. And every time I criticize a movie for that, it's because it's characters coming from my childhood. And they just keep doing it. I don't understand why. But there you go, man. That's everything I got to say about Tom and Jerry. Now it's your turn. What are you thinking? Have you had a chance to check out Tom and Jerry on HBO Max or even in the theaters? It's a day-and-date release, so it is in theaters where available. If you had a chance to check it out, what did you think? Did it work for you? Did it not? I happened to peep RT the other day, and the critic score, real low. Definitely in line with what I was thinking, and wishing there had been more Tom and Jerry in a movie that didn't feature enough Tom and Jerry. But the audience score seems to be fairly positive. So if you watch this, did you like it? Did you just have too low of a bar so it was easy to clear? Or did the movie actually work for you? And if it didn't work for you, let me know why. Was it the fact that you wanted more Tom and Jerry? Were you kind of feeling like me in this one? Anything you're thinking, good, bad, indifferent on Tom and Jerry. If you haven't seen it and I have somehow made you want to see it after this, maybe you like cartoon animals pooping, well then maybe this is a movie for you. And if you're going to check it out, let me know that too. Everything you want to say about Tom and Jerry goes down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you're new, you want to come hang out with C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailers. We got WandaVision just a day and a half away, man. It's so close. You want to be here for that big finale? You want to show a little love support to the old C-Man, and you haven't yet? Well, you know how you can do that? jump over there, man. Join C-Maniac Nation by hitting that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. If not, just hope you come back, give it another go. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace! Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.